When it comes to understanding the origins of Inca civilization, we basically have two sources of information. We've got the archaeological record, and we've got what the Inca explained to the Spanish at the contact period. In this video, we're going to look at both of them and compare them. First, let's take a look at the Inca creation story. We in the Western world tend to call anything that's a creation story from another civilization some sort of myth or legend. We see it as not connected to their history whatsoever. We see these magical, fantastical things that are happening, and we decide that it all must be non-historical. It's not like the Christian world has some figure that can walk on water and resurrect the dead. That isn't magical. That's actually our history, right? Well, I'm sorry. I'll stop with that sort of thing. I just think every once in a while, when we're thinking about these issues, it's nice to look in the mirror of our own culture and try to see ourselves in what we're looking at. The Inca creation story goes something like this. It starts off in complete darkness, and the creator deity, Viracocha, is up at Lake Titicaca. So there's a surface of the world, but there's no light yet. He's the one who brings forth the sun, the moon, the planets, and the stars. So he begins the world in that way. Once there's light, he starts creating humans, and he creates them out of mud from the shores of Lake Titicaca. He paints them different colors, and he sets them out across the world as the different peoples. His favorite peoples he makes, though, are the Inca. And he creates 4 brothers and 4 sisters, and he sets them off the shore of the lake into a cave that has a huge tunnel system that's heading north towards their destiny, Cusco. The 4 brothers are given the title Ayar, so there's Ayar Manco, Ayar Uchi, and so on. The 4 sisters are called Mama Huaco, Mama Okia, things like that. An interesting part is that the word Ayar in Quechua, that means mummy. So there's an obvious connection to ancestors through mummies through the title Ayar. These are their ancestral mummies we're talking about. Now, they go through that tunnel and they pop out the other side south of Cusco, miles and miles. And they come out of a mountainside at a place called Tocotambo, or 3 Windows. And they emerge out of these caves and they meet people there in that first valley. That valley's called Pacaritambo. And the Tambo people live there. The brothers and sisters tell the Tambo, if you will assist us and be our army as we march towards our destiny, we will give you a special place in the new empire. As they leave Pacaritambo, one of the brothers is really being kind of a jerk. And he's hitting the Tambo people, he's arguing with his brothers, and so they decide that they will ditch him. They tell him, oh, we forgot something back in the cave. Can you go get it? And when he does, they ask a very large Tambo to roll a boulder over it, and he's trapped in there. So now we have 3 brothers and 4 sisters marching forward. As they go forward, one of the brothers turns himself into an eagle so he can get a bird's eye view. And he flies around, and he's the first one to see the Valley of Cusco. So as he sees it, he comes back around, tells the group, I see it, and then he flies up to a vantage point that he could see it from, and he becomes a stone pillar there. So interestingly, now we're down to 2 brothers and 4 sisters. They go up to that pillar, and yes, they sight the Valley of Cusco. And Ayar Manco has a big golden staff that he's probing the land with, and he throws it down into the Valley of Cusco, and it lands in the earth and sinks deeply in. That's the way they know it's fertile soil, and it's a good place to establish their capital. Trouble is, there are people living in there, and they're not really willing to share the valley. That's where Mama Huaco comes in. She is a very intense warrior, and she goes down into the valley with this sling, and she throws her sling so hard that it blows some of the locals up. The rest of them are scared by it, and they say, okay, we submit. So the Inca first kings and queens march into the Valley of Cusco. along with their Tombo friends, and they take over the valley. They establish corn farming. Manco Capac marries Mama Huaco, and they have a son named Sinchi Roca. The last thing they do is they break Cusco into two parts, Upper Hurin and Lower Hurin. Lower Hurin is the territory where the Tombos get to live, and Upper Hurin is reserved for the Inca coming royalty. So does any of that fit the archaeology? Well, sort of. Definitely Cusco was their capital, and so that fits it nicely. We can also say that there were people inhabiting there before the Inca. We know that. We take a look at the historical lists of kings and queens that were written in multiple sources in Peru. They were provided by the Inca. Indeed, that king list starts with Manco Capac, and the next one is Sinchi Rocha. So that definitely jives with the creation story. Archaeologists have also located, at least possibly, the location of Pacari Tambo. There's an area that even modern Quechua people pilgrimage down to, and they say the caves there are Toco Tambo. In the area in front of it, archaeologists dug and they found an Inca palace. It was probably one of those places that an Inca inhabited only part of the year when they traveled there, perhaps to honor these three window locations that are connected to the creation story. So we found a palace there. That's one more indicator of part of the story. Now, on a bigger level, where did the Inca come from an archaeological perspective? Well, we know they developed up there in those highland areas, and we suspect that the peoples that really entered Cusco did come from the south, like the story says. For my money, it's really the Wari that are the most similar to what the Inca would become, and if any of the many civilizations of the Andean area are the direct predecessors of the Inca, I think it's the Wari. And I think that for a number of reasons. For one thing, the Wari created agricultural terracing. Before them, there were little experiments here and there, but they're the first ones to put it at a large scale, even build agricultural terracing outside of any settlement. So they started that, something that the Inca did very well. Road systems were also something that the Wari really expanded. Roads, again, were there for thousands of years on the small scale, but the Wari are the first ones to really pave them long distances. And in point of fact, many of the roads that we consider Inca are actually built by the Wari and then improved by the Inca. Another one is mummies. Now, again, there were all sorts of burials for thousands of years, but the very particular process of mummifying the dead and burying them in your temples, that's something that the Wari really brought to another level. The Paracas and the Nazca also had mummies, but they put them in these shafts. The difference between the Wari and eventually the Inca as well is that their mummies lived in their temples and even houses along with them, not out in some sort of cemetery. Now, perhaps the biggest connection between the Wari and who the Inca would become is just the notion of empire building. The Wari start in the Ayacucho Valley, about 500 CE. But they expand out from there with these road systems and these agricultural terraces. And when they go to establish their dominance in a new area, they build structures that are very much like the structures at the Wari capital back in the Ayacucho Valley. In fact, they make one called Piquilacta, which is just outside of Cusco. So even in terms of geographical area, we have one of the Wari centers very close to what would become the Inca capital. Now, one of the disconnects is when the Wari ended. For all intents and purposes, we don't see any more Wari after 1100 CE. By 1200, they're totally gone. So they were in the Cusco area, then they were gone for a period of, say, 200 years before the Inca show up. In the interim, there's a culture in the Cusco Valley that we call the Kilke culture, and we found a number of their ruins on top of Wari ruins and underneath Inca ruins. So in that regard, there are certain stratigraphies that really show a very clear line between Wari, Kilke, and then Inca in the Cusco Valley. So, how do the Inca creation story and the story of archaeology compare? Well, they're not completely apart. For one thing, we do hear that the Inca came from the south in the creation story, and indeed the Wari were south and west, really north and south of them as well. But there was an area where they could have come from the south towards the Cusco Valley. That's not something that's a deal breaker or a big difference between the two. It is clear that there were people in the Cusco Valley when the Inca showed up. So the creation story saying that it was occupied and there was a fight, that may well have come true too. So those are not disconnects. I think in the end, what we're looking at is a romanticized version of basically what archaeology's seeing. Well, we've yet to find any petrified brothers or golden staffs, but still, the stories are not hugely divergent. Instead of a chosen people, chosen by Viracocha to go north and establish the Valley of Cusco, I, as an archaeologist, see it more like Wari 2.0, that Wari began the process of empire building, which primarily happened to the south of Cusco, and then a few centuries later, they coalesced back into another attempt at building empires, and that was the Inca. If you like what I had to say there, maybe you'd like to see some of my other videos. Here are two right here you might be interested in. Give them a try.